nigh.
When you hear the word apocalypse, your brain instantly goes to a very specific cinematic place.
Oh, totally. Giant fireballs.
Right. Giant fireballs, crumbling skyscrapers, people running and screaming through the streets. We expect destruction to look unmistakably destructive.
Yeah, we expect it to be loud.
Exactly. It's violent, it's sudden, and it announces itself, with a bang.
We are so culturally conditioned to just look out for the monster-breathing fire. Like, we assume the end of the world is this kinetic event, an inescapable tidal wave of physical devastation that everyone recognizes as a threat the absolute second it appears on the horizon.
But what if it doesn't happen like that at all? What if the end of the world doesn't start with a bang, but with a handshake?
Yeah, that's the terrifying part.
Like, what if the most terrifying herald of human destruction isn't a military invasion, but a really charismatic diplomat holding a peace treaty?
I mean, it completely inverts the survival instinct.
It really does.
If the catalyst for global ruin arrives disguised as the exact thing we are all praying for, well, our entire defense mechanism is neutralized before the threat even registers.
And that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a fascinating theological and historical analysis that dissects the psychology of global deception.
It's a really heavy but crucial topic.
Yeah. We are looking at excerpts from a piece titled The First Seal, The Deception of False Peace. And our mission for this deep dive is to examine the complex biblical symbolism of the book of Revelation, specifically chapters 5 and 6, to uncover what this text argues is humanity's greatest vulnerability.
Which is not what you'd think.
Right. It is not our capacity for war, but rather our desperate, blinding desire for peace.
And, whether you are parsing biblical prophecy or mapping out historical cycles or even just analyzing human psychology, this deep dive is a really profound look at how charismatic leadership operates on a massive scale.
It really is a masterclass in psychology.
Exactly. We are looking at the actual mechanics of mass manipulation and how a global populace can be psychologically conditioned to just, winningly surrender their autonomy.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to establish the framework of this prophetic timeline first.
Yeah, setting the stage is important.
Right. So, in Revelation chapter 5, God gives Christ a scroll with 7 seals. And this scroll is characterized as Christ's inheritance, right? It's the literal title deed to the earth.
The ultimate deed of ownership, yeah.
Exactly. It represents ultimate authority.
Yeah.
But it's not a book you just sit down and read by a fire. Opening it, actually breaking a seal, actively triggers a sequence of real-world events.
It acts out the judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think of like a digital smart contract.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like the code is locked, but the moment you verify the signature by breaking a seal, the code just executes autonomously in the physical world. It sets off this chain reaction that absolutely cannot be reversed.
A smart contract is, honestly, the perfect way to conceptualize it. It is an active, kinetic document. You break a seal, and the machinery of judgment just begins to turn. And what's critical to understand about this specific 7-year timeline is how the sequence is engineered.
It's very specific.
Very. The breaking of seals 1 through 4 covers the first 3.5 years. Then seal 5 stretches across the midpoint.
Okay.
And then seals 6 and 7 cover the final 3.5 years, which is the period often called the Great Tribulation.
And what's terrifying about this timeline isn't just the 7-year duration. It's the exponential curve of the destruction.
It compounds.
Yeah, it operates like a tightening vice. The first 3.5 years sort of lure humanity in. The midpoint springs the trap, and then those final seals release just a concentrated barrage of judgment.
Right, because that 7th seal actually contains all 7 trumpets and all 7 bowls.
Which is wild. It is literally an escalating algorithm of catastrophe.
It is. The structure is designed to breed complacency before it unleashes annihilation.
The boiling frog effect.
Exactly, the boiling frog effect, but on a planetary scale. Because before humanity faces the undeniable sky-falling devastation of the 7th seal, the first domino has to fall.
And that's the big question.
Right. How does the entire sequence begin? We have to look at the breaking of the very first seal, which reveals a reality that completely contradicts every single survival instinct we have.
See, I'm struggling to buy this premise a little bit. Because when the Lamb breaks that first seal, one of the 4 living creatures guarding the throne shouts, "Come!" with a voice of thunder.
Right, a thunderous voice.
And when you hear thunder, you expect lightning, you expect a storm. But instead what comes forward is a rider on a white horse, which is a universal symbol of peace.
A literal white horse.
The apocalypse kicking off with a peace treaty. Historically, peace treaties, even really flawed ones, they stop the bleeding.
They do.
So how does stopping a war logically act as the catalyst for the end of the world? It feels completely backward to me.
What's fascinating here is how the specific imagery answers that exact skepticism. The rider on the white horse carries a bow, but it is an arrowless bow.
No arrows at all.
None. It represents bloodless victories. He isn't conquering through brute military force or warfare. He conquers through diplomacy, through economic leverage, cultural subversion, and treaties that effectively disarm his opponents.
That is so insidious.
Right. If you fire an arrow, your enemy shoots back. But if you convince your enemy to hand over their weapons in exchange for a promise of security, you have conquered them without shedding a single drop of blood.
Wow. And a bloodless victory is still a victory for the conqueror.
Exactly.
Because he monopolizes the narrative of peace. If someone stands up against this treaty, they aren't viewed as a patriot anymore.
No, they're the villain.
Right. They are branded an enemy of humanity, a warmonger trying to drag the world back into chaos. It's just a terrifying mechanism of control. The populace basically polices itself.
They do. And we also have to look at the crown this rider wears, because the original Greek provides a crucial distinction here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He wears a Stephanos. Now, a diadema is a true royal crown, right? A crown of inherent authority and royal lineage.
Like what a king is born into.
Exactly. But a Stephanos is a victor's wreath, kind of like an Olympic gold medal. It is an award.
So he isn't the king who marches into the Capitol and forces everyone to bow down at gunpoint.
No, not at all. The Stephanos proves this rider is not a true king with inherent authority, but someone who is awarded immense power by the world itself.
They give it to him.
The world willingly hands him the crown because they are enamored with his perceived achievements. They absolutely love the illusion of stability he provides, so they reward him with absolute power. It is democratic surrender.
Democratic surrender. That's a powerful phrase. He doesn't take over the world happily gives it to him.
Willingly.
So, moving from the metaphorical symbols to the actual persona of this rider, who is identified as the Antichrist, we have to examine the psychological state of a world that would actually do this.
Right. Why would they give up control?
Well, the environment is utterly exhausted. You've got years of war, famine, fractured societies, broken economies. The global nervous system is just shot.
Completely frayed. And when humanity is in a state of profound collective trauma, the tolerance for risk drops to zero.
Nobody wants to fight anymore.
Exactly. People are no longer interested in liberty or self-determination. They are purely interested in survival. There is this deep, desperate yearning for a savior to just, make the pain stop.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it mirrors individual human psychology perfectly.
Oh, how so?
Think about someone who is finally exiting a deeply traumatic, highly toxic relationship.
Oh, yeah.
They're exhausted, emotionally battered, and just completely vulnerable. And right in that moment, they meet someone new.
The rebound.
The ultimate rebound. Someone incredibly charming who says all the right things, who promises absolute safety. They immediately fall for this charismatic narcissist and miss every single red flag because they're just so desperate to feel safe. They don't want to look for the catch.
That is a brilliant comparison. And to push that toxic relationship analogy even further, the abuser doesn't just offer safety. They systematically cut the victim off from anyone who points out the red flags.
Oh, man. They isolate them.
Exactly. And geopolitically, the Antichrist does the exact same thing by isolating dissenting voices. He leverages the world's trauma against it.
Because he won't look like a monster.
No, he won't look like a villain with horns. If he looked like a monster, humanity would naturally unite against him. He will be smart, handsome, charming, and universally beloved.
He is the ultimate politician, basically giving the public exactly what it is begging for.
Yep.
And he conquers through deceit and cunning. I know 2 Thessalonians points out that his rise specifically targets those who are vulnerable to this deception.
It does.
And he really hones in on Israel. Daniel chapter 9 details a, quote, firm covenant with many for 1 week, which means a 7-year period.
The 7-year treaty, right.
Right. Israel, a nation whose entire modern and ancient history is defined by this pursuit of lasting security in a very hostile region, is drawn into this deceptive treaty.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Bible repeatedly highlights this specific psychological blind spot.
This desire for false peace.
Exactly. Jeremiah condemned leaders who proclaimed peace, peace when there is no peace.
Right.
And First Thessalonians explicitly states that while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly. It is a masterclass in mass manipulation.
The illusion of safety is the weapon.
It is the exact mechanism used to disarm the populace. You convince a nation that the war is over, they dismantle their defenses, and, well, that is when the slaughter begins.
And by securing that impossible peace, he becomes the world's most powerful man. I mean, he eclipses Caesar, Alexander the Great, Stalin, even the modern superpowers.
Everyone.
Because his power doesn't come from fear. It comes from adoration. He's idolized. The adoration is literally the lock on the cage.
And, we have seen this exact dynamic play out in the geopolitical arena before. This isn't just some abstract theological warning. It is grounded in harsh historical reality.
Yeah, the text draws a major parallel.
It does. Look at the 1930s and the rise of Adolf Hitler.
Right. The trauma of the First World War had completely paralyzed the international community. You had the Somme, Verdun, the total collapse of the global economy.
An entire generation was just gone.
Entire generations of young men were wiped out. And the League of Nations and the democratic powers were in that exact state of extreme vulnerability and exhaustion that we were just talking about. They were absolutely terrified of another conflict.
This raises an important question about the mechanics of appeasement. Like, why did intelligent leaders look at a dictator who was systematically building a war machine and choose to believe his peace treaties?
Because they wanted to.
Exactly. Hitler made endless claims of peace. He assured the world he had no territorial demands, only a desire for parity. But while he was shouting peace from the podium, he was literally marching into the Rhineland, Austria, the Sudetenland, and Czechoslovakia.
Breaking the Versailles Treaty right out in the open. And the international community just sat idly by.
They did nothing.
It wasn't just a lack of intelligence. It was willful blindness. They desperately wanted the lie to be true.
Right.
They wanted to believe that if they just gave him Czechoslovakia, he would be satisfied, and they could keep their fragile little peace. It is the toxic relationship analogy on a global scale.
Completely.
They were ignoring the giant blazing red flags because confronting them would shatter the illusion of safety.
The trauma of World War I structurally paralyzed their decision-making. The alternative, which was confronting a rising dictator and risking another catastrophic war, was just too terrifying for them to contemplate.
So they chose the lie.
They did. The illusion of peace served as a Trojan horse. It allowed one of history's most brutal and repressive regimes to build its military infrastructure right out in the open, shielded by the applause of a deceived public and a compliant international community.
It's just staggering. And by the time the world woke up from the illusion of peace in 1939, it was too late.
Way too late.
The cost of that complacency was over 60 million deaths. That was over 2.5% of the global population at the time, all stemming from a collective willingness to believe a comforting lie rather than face an uncomfortable truth.
It's a heavy, heavy historical lesson.
And the Antichrist regime operates on this exact same dynamic, but on a scale that makes historical dictators look minor in comparison. The short-lived golden era of peace is just the setup for the most brutal global regime ever known.
Giving humanity over to its own self-deception, allowing the world to embrace a false savior who promises a painless utopia, is actually the ultimate judgment. The arrowless bow achieves what thousands of tanks never could. It convinces the victims to willingly open the gates and hand over the keys to the city.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now?
That's the big takeaway.
Right. The core lesson is about critical thinking.
100%.
It is a massive, flashing warning sign to always look past the white horse, to rigorously examine the actual mechanics of power behind the charming smile and the comforting promises of security.
You have to look at what's really happening.
Exactly. How are these treaties functioning? Who is actually benefiting? And what freedoms are being quietly surrendered in exchange for that temporary feeling of safety?
We have to analyze the fine print. We have to ask hard questions, even when the macroeconomic indicators look good and the geopolitical tensions are cooling down.
Because tyrants rarely announce themselves with a declaration of war.
No, they announce themselves with a promise of peace. And once the Stephanos crown is freely given by the public, it is almost impossible to take it back without tearing society apart.
We have to be willing to interrogate the smart contract before we break the seal and let the code execute. Because the moment we trade critical thinking for the comfort of a bloodless victory, well, we have already lost the war.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over.
Oh, lay it on us.
We've talked entirely about how a desperate, exhausted world willingly hands over power to a charismatic individual standing on a podium. But consider the modern digital age.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
With generative AI, deepfakes, and hyper-targeted algorithmic manipulation, a future leader wouldn't even need to hold a physical rally to deceive a nation.
They could just reach us on our phones.
Exactly. They could manufacture the illusion of global consensus directly in our pockets. They could artificially generate the exact cultural exhaustion and the subsequent demand for a savior through our screens.
That is terrifying.
Are we currently building the exact technological infrastructure, the personalized data profiles, the echo chambers, the reliance on digital authority that a figure like this would use to forge that false peace without us ever realizing we've been conquered? I mean, if the ultimate global deception comes disguised as the exact thing humanity desperately prays for, peace, security, and prosperity, how do we differentiate between genuine progress and the first steps of a catastrophic trap? Is it possible that our deepest, most desperate desires are actually our greatest blind spots?
Man, it really makes you look at the apps on your phone and the news feeds you scroll through in a completely different light. Forget the fireballs and the meteor strikes. The real danger might just be the algorithm feeding you exactly what you want to hear until you willingly hand over the crown. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep looking past the surface, and we will catch you next time.
9.